Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer fans, welcome back to Feed the Fire, a Chicago Fire podcast. It is episode 45. It is after the All-Star break. It is after the start of League's Cup, and it is after the debut of Lionel Messi here in Major League Soccer, albeit in a League's Cup game, but still his MLS debut. So what do you all want to talk about? Messi's first goal, the League's Cup, and the Fire's chances of making a run. Should we give you a little bit more scouting on their latest designated player, Ousmane Doumbia, because he's eligible to play this Thursday, I believe. So we are going to actually talk about it all, except the All-Star game. We're not going to talk about that. A 5-0 drubbing at the hands of Arsenal, even in an exhibition game. That's pretty embarrassing. Wayne Rooney had some comments about it, about how it's terrible that All-Star games are just terrible from a team cohesiveness standpoint. And I think he's got some valid points, but still, it's an All-Star game. You got to do better, especially when you lose by 5 goals. Can't even score 1. Yeah, terrible job, everybody. So we're going to just forget about that, and we are going to go right into all of our Chicago Fire and Major League Soccer content. Want to remind everyone the show is sponsored by Skira Icelandic Spring Water, available at your local 7-Eleven. And also, we want to take a moment, congratulate the United States women's national team on their victory in their opening match in the Women's World Cup, a 3-0 win over Vietnam. Maybe not as pretty and as clean as they would have liked it to be, but at the end of the day, in tournament play, you take the result and you move on. And they're going to learn from that, and they're going to learn quick because they have a big match against the Netherlands, who, after defeating Portugal in their first game, this match now USA-Dutch could decide who wins the group or not. So keep an eye on that, soccer fans. Take a turn to Major League Soccer, to League's Cup, though. We are on MLS regular season break for the League's Cup, and there were so many great games out there. The Philly game, the Minnesota game, how these MLS clubs dominated. I was so impressed with Minnesota after going down a man to still continue and score 3 goals more, winning 4-0 over Puebla. And by the way, that Reynoso free kick goal was a beautiful thing. He is really feeling it after having such a delayed start, controversial delayed start, scandalous late start to the Minnesota season. But yeah, that goal was brilliant, where he is about 35-ish maybe yards to the left of the keeper. Maybe I'm overestimating it. Maybe it was a little closer. But they thought he was going to cross. They did not. Puebla did not put a wall, not even a 1 or 2 man wall. The goalkeeper was at the far post cheating. The entire opening of the near post was there, and Reynoso took it and just blasted it into the near post. It was a great read by a smart player and a better execution by him too. So the Fire are going to have their hands full with Minnesota, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. But obviously the big news here is Leo Messi's debut for Inter Miami, comes in as a second half sub along with Sergio Busquets, and has a decent half. A lot of people were really pointing out that he's not playing defense, and from a Fire fan's perspective, it's like, well, if we're not going to let Shaqiri off the hook because he wasn't playing defense all year, how can we let Messi off the hook, especially if he's going to bring the title of GOAT to Major League Soccer? He should be playing a little defense, or at least giving that little token jog, maybe that Shaqiri gave every now and then. That was some of the criticism of Messi in his first game. But you got to remember, all the fanfare, brand new team, coming in into a brand new tournament against opposition he probably hasn't had too much time to scout for, or at least even with the scouting, is not familiar with them on the field, new pitch. There's a lot of things that go into it. And yeah, he's Leo Messi. He's your DP star. In his position is kind of that attacking midfielding role, that number 10 role. It's okay if he's not pressing for the 30, 40 minutes that he was out on the pitch, all right? He was making so much more happen offensively. Plus, just from the scheme, if you looked at the way Miami was lining up on the defensive side of things, you had a nice solid line of 4 defenders right around the 18. You had another nice line of 4 midfielders, maybe about 5 to 7 yards ahead of them. Then you had Messi as the outlet man. He would kind of just drift slowly laterally wherever the ball was on which side of the pitch, and he would be the first outlet. because when he got the ball, he would turn and go, and he would dribble and he would take on defenders, and he showed a little flair in a few moves. But Chivas, excuse me, was it Chivas Cruz Azul? Were not going to just let Messi beat them. They were bodying him. They were playing him physically. They had no intimidation. But Messi was just better than a lot of them on the day. And really the game-changing moment in stoppage time, he gets the free kick, blasts it upper 90 near post. The free kick just outside of the 18 box. He draws the foul there. There are some calls that it wasn't a foul and that MLS is protecting him. But come on, okay, it's a foul. Now, yes, I will say that this could have been handled a lot better by their goalkeeper. The goalkeeper is too far to the far post, even with the wall there. He's too far to the far post. He does not get a good read on it, does not get a good jump. His footwork is incorrect. You see him crossing his feet over to try and get there faster rather than shuffling and sliding and pushing off. So the goalkeeper does not do a good job at all. Probably still not going to save this one. It was a well-placed shot by Messi. But what I enjoyed the most about it was his celebration. I loved how the whole team got together. He was joyous. And despite what the New Yorker says, I think the celebration is fantastic. You really got to have the joy to continue to do this. It's not like, well, I'm here. Yeah, this is what I'm supposed to do. Or, boss, this was too easy. Nope, he worked for it. He earned it. He celebrated it. And his teammates were with him and the fans were with him. And you know, seeing MLS win a game had me jumping up and celebrating, not just because it's Messi, but because Miami took it to this Liga MX team. A Miami team who's been terrible all season gets the win. So there was a lot there. The other thing I want to talk about is I do agree with everyone who has said that it's a little cringe to hear my team promoting ticket sales using Leo Messi. Though at my age, I really shouldn't be using the word cringe, but I understand the sentiment, and I think it's appropriate for me too. Using an opposing player to market your team's ticket sales, advertising, whatever it is, it's a little uncomfortable. It's a little unsettling. Now, I understand that you got to market the game, and Messi coming to MLS is huge. I'm not underscoring this. I am not underselling it. And in any other sport, when one of the best would come to your town, you see a spike in ticket prices and you see other advertising around it. And MLS has to market the game. They've got a global audience. Messi's bringing credibility to the league, both with other fans and with players who might want to play here. He's bringing more talent, again, players who want to come here. We already see with Inter Miami, they're signing everybody they can who's ever been linked to or wanted to play with Messi. Obviously, it's a huge revenue boost to have Messi there, to have players, to have fans buying tickets, buying jerseys, buying souvenirs from him, from their teams, from everybody, concessions in the stands, right? And also, having Messi in MLS raises the talent level. On the pitch, opponents are going to have to play better. Within the Miami organization, it's going to raise the level of training just being around him, as well as development. Like, the younger players are going to want to be motivated. They're going to be motivated a lot more than they already were. So having him in the league, you have to market it. You have to welcome it. It's going to do all these benefits. But let me play both sides here. Let me do the mediator thing. Let me do the legal thing here. There is a difference between the Chicago Fire, my hometown team, and the club I support in MLS, saying, "Hey, Nick, come buy a ticket to the Fire game to see Messi," or, "Hey, we've got this special ticket bundle that you're going to get the Miami game and a few other whatever. We don't care. We'll throw a couple other games in to make it worth it for you," right? Or so there's that. The difference between that and saying, "Hey, come out and see Xherdan Shaqiri and the Chicago Fire take on Leo Messi and Inter Miami. Can Chicago continue their playoff push against an aspiring basement team like Miami?" Like, there's two different marketing, right? There's two different ways to market it. And if you're going to do the latter, I think you wouldn't have lost as much luster with some of the fans of your club. And not to get too into the weeds, this is another strike against kind of the single entity structure of MLS, if you're up for criticizing that topic, because now every franchise, every independent, I shouldn't say independent, every franchise is expected to push the message from the front office, push Messi, use it. So, I mean, and you have to, right? For all the reasons I said before. But you look at other leagues like the NFL, because that's where MLS wants to be. They want to be like the NFL, major sport, popular, tons of revenue, tons of eyeballs, right? Tons of talent. But the NFL can promote their stars, and the teams can also promote themselves. The MLS is still that single entity structure pushing the narrative of market Messi. And maybe part of that was in the contract, or at least implied, right? But here's what I am happy. Here's what I am happy about people pushing back against MLS. Not because I hate MLS and no, because I think that's stupid. If you're going to criticize MLS just for criticizing MLS because whatever reason, you got conspiracy theories, or you think that Europe is the best and the South American talent is, but whatever, fine. You're entitled to your opinion, as terrible as it may be. But where I think it's great to hear the fans pushing back is because we're seeing a new generation of fans who are fans of their club first. We're not Major League Soccer fans. We're not American soccer fans. We're not rah-rah USMNT, red, white, and blue. We are Chicago Fire fans. We are DC United fans. We are Portland Timbers fans. We're not, I love MLS. Chicago's my local club that I go to their games, right? It's awesome to see that there's a whole new generation of fans who identify first with their club than with the league. I think it's great. It shows how much the sport, the league, and the clubs have grown, right? And while the Apple TV deal maybe took things a teeny tiny step backwards by getting rid of all the local broadcasts and trying to rotate it, again, they're trying to model themselves after the NFL and have the broadcast teams. And again, fans are pushing back against that, saying these league broadcasters are terrible. They don't know the first thing about my club. They don't even know how to pronounce my coach's name. And by the way, if you didn't know, from one Greek to you all, Klopas is not a difficult Greek name to pronounce. That's one of the easy ones, people. It only has Klopas. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 letters, right? 6 letters, 2 vowels. Not a difficult Greek name compared to some of the other ones. Like, say, the ones on the squad, Koutsias, or throughout MLS, Pandemis, Giacomakis. Those are the more difficult ones, and they still have been screwing up pronouncing Klopas, right? So that is another thing where the league is kind of taking a little step back, hopefully to eventually take 2 steps forward with better broadcasting teams. But people are pushing back, and that gets back to the point. This new generation of fans is promoting their club. They are diehard club fans, and I love that. These fans are driving the conversation between the anti-Messi marketing approach and also the don't wear Messi jerseys in our supporters section topics. And I think that's fantastic that they are saying, yep, Messi could be the greatest of all time. Messi is going to change this league. But when he comes into our stadium, he is on the other team. And as much as we want to see the sport grow and the league grow, it starts with our club. And I think that's fantastic. And hopefully then that grows into, it starts with our club, and our club now needs to build training facilities. Our club now needs to expand our academy programs. Our club now needs to expand its scouting network throughout the country as well as the globe. So I hope it ripples out, and I hope what the fans are demanding, this club-centric approach, the franchise owners are hearing and doing as much as they can to promote their club, as much as they are trying to grow the league and the value of the league. So this is a good problem to have. These are good conversations. They're tough ones, but they're good ones for the growth of the game here in the United States. Now, continuing the conversation about Leagues Cup, man, has it been fun. It's the newest tournament in the world. It's off to a great start. I love that the PK shootouts happen immediately after regulation time. There's no stop, or there's no extra time. There's no golden goal, whatever. There's no home and away stuff. It's, you know what? You play everybody in your group of 3 once, go right to PKs. You get if you tie in regulation, if there's a draw, you each get a point, and then you win the shootout. You get 2 more for a total of 3. It looks like you get the win. So I love that format, and the fact that they put 3 spots to the CONCACAF Champions Cup, the new CCL, really incentivizes teams to make a run. And let's use Chicago as that example. Are the Fire going to win MLS? Are they going to go to MLS Cup? Because usually both teams in MLS Cup will end up in Champions League. No, the Fire aren't going to MLS Cup. Let's be realistic here, right? Don't even come at me with the, well, if this and this and if this. No, too many ifs. Not happening. The Fire aren't going to win like 4 or 5 games in a row to get to MLS Cup, right? So they're not going to get to MLS Cup. They're not winning the Supporter Shield. We know that they flamed out in US Open Cup. So if they want to get to the Champions Cup, if they want to get to the Continental Tournament, as every team should have as a goal, asterisk, barring how their resources are allocated, and they got to get better at all that stuff first, right? We got to get some more depth pieces. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, every team should have as a goal getting to the CONCACAF Champions Cup, especially with the expanded formatting. And all you have to do is finish third in League's Cup. So you don't even have to win the whole thing. Top 3 teams go to CONCACAF Champions Cup. So the Fire should make that a goal. And let's take a look at their matchups and see if it's likely to happen. In their group, in their central group, Central Division Group 2, I believe. They are with Minnesota United and with Puebla. And we saw Minnesota smack Puebla around in that first match. And as I said in the last, though, they should advance with Minnesota. They should be beating Pueblo, who is not looking good early on in the Liga MX season. And the Fire are prime season. They're getting Ousmane Doumbia, hopefully some fresh legs with him. Hopefully they're getting a little healthier as well. They didn't have to play, quote unquote, in the first round. They didn't have a game this past weekend, which is why we didn't have the show this weekend. Took a little time off myself just to kind of recoup and spend some time with the kiddos. Which, by the way, my kiddos have had some great quotes that I've been putting out on Twitter regarding CF97 and MLS and Messi. So make sure you follow along on Twitter at Glasshouse Soccer, SOCCR. Maybe with Twitter X, they can get some more characters out there and not restrict it. But Glasshouse Soccer without the E on Twitter. So the Fire should move on. Now let's look big picture. Assuming they beat Puebla, even if they lose to Minnesota, they should advance. Assuming they do, let's take a look big picture here. There's 2 group stage games, right? Then we've got 3 knockout games to win the region, and that puts you in the tournament semifinal. So 2 more matches to win League's Cup. So you got to win. You got to advance out of your group, win 4 games in a row, and that's a tough order for any team in any league around the world, and not just soccer, but for any team in any sport to win 4 or 5 straight games is very, very difficult. And that's why most teams that do it are crowned champions and walk away with trophies, right? And remembered forever by their fans for that one magical run, right? And maybe the Fire can do that for us this year. But again, as I said in the opening segment, I don't see them winning that many games in a row. But if they can win 3 games and just get to maybe that 3rd place game, win the 3rd place game, that would be huge. That would be really big for the Fire to build some momentum for next season. I'm not even saying for the rest of this year. If they can hang on and qualify for the playoffs to go get smacked down by, say, New England or Nashville in a home playoff game, that would be big to have a little feather in the cap from the first ever Major Leagues Cup here. But can they do it? Can they even get out? Like, if they get out of this group, like I'm assuming they do, who are they going to match up with? Who else is in the Central that the Fire are going to have to play? Now, if they come in second in Group 2, which I'm anticipating Minnesota winning, they will play the winner of Central Region Group 1. Now, Group 1 has Columbus, the Crew, Club America, and St. Louis City. Now, St. Louis already lost to Columbus, so it's not very likely that St. Louis will advance, but technically they're still in it. And how amazing would that be for the Chicago Fire to have played St. Louis in the Open Cup, to play them in the regular season, and then play them in the League's Cup? How great would it be if the Chicago Fire to actually win, to defeat the expansion side rival St. Louis 3 times in a single season in 3 different competitions? Would be absolutely wild. I kind of hope that happens. But, only if the Fire win. But it's likely that Columbus and Club America will advance after St. Louis already lost to the Crew. So from there on out, they could match up with any number of teams the way things shake out. So let's look at the other groups. Group 3 Central Region has Chivas, FC Cincinnati, and Sporting Kansas City. So you've got your 2 Chicago, your two MLS clubs that Chicago's played with and is familiar with, as well as Chivas. You've got Nashville, Toluca, and the Colorado Rapids in the fourth and final group of the Central region. Nashville, a familiar opponent for Chicago. Toluca, don't know anything about them. And the Rapids are having a real rough go of things this season, tied for last place, I believe, going into League's Cup break. So, can the Fire advance out of the Central region? Well, do you think that they're going to be able to defeat the Crew, Nashville, and Cincinnati? Or are they going to be able to beat Club America, Chivas, and Toluca throughout the course of the next 2-3 weeks? That is a tall order. I don't believe they can do it, but maybe they win one or two of those games if they get matched up with a familiar MLS opponent who takes them lightly, who still thinks of this as a U.S. Open Cup where you got to rotate squads. Maybe the Fire can get into the regional final, but I don't see them winning the region. And even then, I wouldn't expect them to then go on and win a semifinal game against one of the best clubs in Major League Soccer or Liga MX. So that's where I'm going to cap the Chicago Fire's run at its quarterfinals. It is regional semis, if you want to call it that, quarterfinals of the League Cup. Now, here's what I also have really enjoyed about the League's Cup. Some good thoughts on the League's Cup here, right? Major League Soccer cannot be a top 10 league in the world, which is a goal of theirs, and what I'd love to see as a fan. They can't be a top 10 league in the world if they are not the best in their own region. If they are not as good as Liga MX, then how can you say you're going to be on par with, I don't know, the Belgian league, the Portuguese league, the Dutch league, anything like that, the Danish league, even for that matter, the Turkish league, even though I really don't see them near the Turkish league. I think we've surpassed that a little bit. But you can't be a top 10 league if you're not the best in CONCACAF, right? So this is the way to test it. This is the way to have multiple matchups between Liga MX and MLS. Doing it in the Champions League just wasn't enough because you had such a disparity between the two teams. You had in-form Liga MX clubs with depth, with hardly any roster restrictions, at least compared to Major League Soccer, going up against preseason MLS clubs who have just made all these signings and moves and are essentially new clubs from the team that qualified for Champions League. So this at least addresses a lot of those issues and maybe even flips the in-season issue since Liga MX, I think it's the Apertura, is in the fall. I could be wrong about that. If it's the Clausura, I apologize. If it's the Apertura part of their season, they're about 3 games in, I believe, and then they're coming into League's Cup. So still relatively new, but technically they've started their season. So this is a great way to test it, and it's sanctioned by CONCACAF, it's sanctioned by FIFA, so phenomenal way to do it. More soccer is always a good thing, at least from an entertainment perspective, a development perspective, and it's something new and novel that can be marketed to the rest of the world. Honestly, it kind of reminds me of college basketball's Big Ten ACC challenge, where if you look back, 20 years ago, when they started that, the ACC was the premier college basketball conference. And then the Big Ten said, we're gonna have this challenge where rankings from the last season, 1 through 10, are going to match up the next season, and we're going to say whoever wins best out of 10, wins the challenge, right? And for many, many years, it was like 9-1, 8-2, 8-2, 9-1, 7-3, all in favor of the ACC. And then eventually you had a few Big Ten clubs like Michigan State, like Wisconsin, like Ohio State, Illinois to an extent, starting to generate some buzz and get some recruits and get some better coaching. And then you started to see the Big Ten ACC Challenge really balance out. And you started seeing 7-5, 6-5. Then the Big Ten actually won. And then they've won a fairly equal amount. Again, this is not a college basketball podcast. I haven't done the research on that going back statistically, but it really helped set the standard for the Big Ten teams. We need to get to the ACC's level. And the ACC expects to win championships. They expect to win preseason tournaments. They expect to win NCAA tournaments. And if one of their teams ends up at the NIT for whatever reason, they expect to win that too. And the Big Ten has has really taken that Big Ten ACC challenge as their way to compare themselves to the ACC and develop and grow and contend. Now, it hasn't paid off in the sense of national championships, but over the last 15, 20 years, there's a Big Ten team that has been in the Final Four of the national championship probably every 3 to 4 years or so. So the level has gone up, even if you want to believe Jim Boeheim that it's all about national championships. But anyway, that's my comparison, that the MLS is now at that point where they really need to stack themselves up against Liga MX in an annual competition like this to be considered a top 10 league in the world. My concerns, though, you can never have the good without the bad, the light without the dark. Watching a few Star Wars with the kids here, so that's been on my mind. But the concern I have, and it's a concern that is echoed from fans to players to coaches to leagues all throughout the world whenever you have these tournaments, right? Usually you hear about it coming from Jurgen Klopp and his Liverpool team playing 1,001 games every year, right? But it's scheduling. It's the amount of minutes played for every player out there. But it's a chicken and an egg argument, and you kind of had to start somewhere, right? And here's where I'm saying, with more games, especially tournaments like this, you need to have deeper rosters. And I'm not saying add more roster spots. I'm saying you need to have better quality players from 1 to 26 or however many are allowed in the League's Cup, right? You need to have deeper, more talented squads. In order to do that, you need to have better facilities, better academies, the ability to sign better players financially and with changing roster rules. And you need to have better scouting departments and better executives. That all requires less stringent roster rules and more money, which won't come. You won't get more money until you have more games and tournaments and TV deals and things to market and bigger players coming to play in these games, right? So it's kind of a chicken and an egg argument. And I would have liked to see the roster rules relaxed or maybe some more money dumped into the league before expanding the games. But this is the impetus. This is what MLS did. And hopefully it kickstarts that cycle of more depth, more development, more money, more facilities, and then continued success. But really, let's see. This is the first time they've done it this big. We'll see how the teams fare, not just in the week or two after Leagues Cup, but in their offseason, how their players are recovering and what feedback we're hearing. Now let's take a quick sponsor break. I want to recognize Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear. Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water. Clearly, pun intended, it is one of the best, and I can vouch for that. The water in Iceland is crystal clear, crisp, and refreshing. Like their tap water is better than any sort of filtered bottled water we get in the U.S. I took a trip there in the fall, and they even had a little sign in the hotel we were staying at in the bathroom that said, "Please drink our tap water. It is that good." Like don't use bottles, don't pollute, don't do all, don't buy bottled water because you're traveling. Just drink our tap water. So like they know it's good, and you should too. Go grab a bottle of Skira Icelandic Spring Water at your local 7-Eleven. Now, to finish our show today, in anticipation of seeing him play in Leagues Cup against Minnesota later this week, I wanted to take a little bit of a deeper dive, try to get a little bit more scouting on the Chicago Fire's newest signing, their designated player on loan, Ousmane Doumbia. Now, they officially announced his signing back almost a month ago on June 28th, and we haven't heard much about him. I think there were some work visa issues getting everything cleared like that. He is yet to appear for the club. He's been training. But I anticipate seeing him in some form or other in action against Minnesota in the League's Cup match. Maybe they send him out there in the second half and say, shadow Reynoso. Make sure he can't do what he did against Puebla to us. Now, he'll occupy a DP spot for the rest of the season, but it's only a loan. So I assume if he does well, the next GM, again, assuming Heights is gone, will maybe try to get him on like a TAM deal or a 1 or 2 year deal here in Chicago. I would not expect any manager, other than Heights, to give him an actual contract and sign him as a designated player. You just don't give an aging defensive midfielder a designated player contract in Major League Soccer if you have any aspirations of putting together a winning team. It ties up your resources, ties up your roster flexibility, And it sends the wrong message to your fans and your players that that's what you value, an old D-mid, not young strikers and goals and offense and things like that. So that being said, he is valued by transfer market at about 900 million pounds. So not even if he was a DP, you wouldn't be tying up too much money on it. But again, it's the message it sends and the roster flexibility you're losing. To talk a little bit more about Doumbia himself, he's 31 years old, but he turned pro back in 2012. He has spent his entire career in the Swiss Super League, but for maybe his first year or two when he was playing for a club in the Ivory Coast, which is his country of birth, which is who he would represent on the international scene. I don't believe he's gotten any call-ups, but he is the younger brother of Ivory Coast national team player Seydou Doumbia, who's also played for Young Boys, CSK Moscow, Roma, Girona. I think he was on loan to Newcastle for a little bit, as well as a number of other clubs around Europe. So there's a little bit of soccer pedigree in this family here. But within the Swiss Super League, he's steadily moved up the table, even as far as clubs go. He's played for 5 Swiss Super League teams in the last 10 years or so, and most recently has played for Lugano and Zurich and won a Swiss Cup in 2022, I believe, with Zurich. Sorry, that's the American in me coming out, right? Now, Doumbia is definitely a D-mid, and you can look at that by his complete lack of offensive numbers and goal scoring, as well as just his positional play, right? This last season with Lugano, he had 28 shots, so less than 1 shot per game. He only put 9 of those on target and ended up scoring 2 goals. So yeah, he is not there to do anything offensively. If he gets in the right spot at the right time, he'll have a rip. But he is not here for his offense. Let's be clear about that. In fact, in his last season with Lugano in 2023 here, he's 3rd in tackles won in the league. He was the 3rd highest tackles won in all of the Swiss Super League, and was not in the top 10 for fouls committed or yellow cards received. So he plays clean. I don't know if that's going to translate well in MLS. I don't know if attackers are going to take advantage if that means he's not as physical a player. But maybe, again, I'm making an assumption because he's not committing fouls and picking up yellow cards that he's not as physical a player. I could be wrong. If you're at this level, you're playing a physical game. No doubt about that. The MLS is known as a bit more of a physical league. So that's something to keep an eye on. Just something to keep an eye on, right? Maybe his technical ability is that good. The other thing is he was not anywhere near the top of the league in intercepted passes either. So that is something. He's more of a man defender. I would expect to see him hanging back a little bit further and kind of tracking runners. Or I'm sorry, picking up ball carriers instead of tracking runners. There we go. That's what I meant to say. He'll be picking up ball carriers, right? All right. He is also 7th in fouls drawn. So can I say he's smart on the ball then? That he's drawing fouls, that he can try to progress a little bit, will try to dribble forward a little bit. And really, if you take the statistics from the website fbref.com, you put it into their comparison finder, and it'll show you how Doumbia compares to other players in their respective leagues. And the way the numbers shook out, he is essentially the Mason Mount of the Swiss Super League. So whatever your feelings are towards Mason Mount, that's Doumbia's statistical comp as far as their respective leagues. Also, if you really want to get nitpicky, he did score an own goal this season. Anyway, so that is Ousmane Doumbia. The signing is looking like a move to make a signing for signing's sake. Maybe they needed to move some pieces around between the clubs for financial reasons, or maybe they really felt, Heights and Pelser and whoever else is involved in the decision-making process, we need help defensively. And if that's what their priority is, then they're completely misguided. The Fire need offense. The only way the signing makes sense is we can make this move. We can bring him over on a short-term loan DP deal because we can't find the right offensive piece to put on this team. So if you can't find the right one, don't try to force a square peg into a round hole. which we've seen them do for the last several years they've been running the club. So let's just bring Doumbia over, and maybe he can help shore up the back line a little bit, help shore up the defense. You know, if Fede Navarro is still hurt and he's not 100%. Also, if Gaston Jimenez is going to be moving on in the next year or two, maybe you extend the loan out a little bit. And also looking in the next year or two for the Fire, Fede Navarro then is your only real defensive midfielder, because Herbers, I don't believe, is a true defensive midfielder. And honestly, when the Fire want to be in playoff contention year in and year out and start improving, making runs at trophies, Herbers should not be starting. He should be the back end of the roster, right? I would prefer actually some academy kids to be getting minutes, but apparently the Fire don't think this is a waste of a season, especially sitting in 8th place right now. Which, by the way, is still below half of the Eastern Conference, but it is a playoff spot because MLS is goofy like that, right? 2/3 of your teams are making the playoffs. So you're going to see Jimenez is going to be gone just because his contract is coming up, and I don't think they should re-sign him at all unless they can just get him on like a bargain basement deal. The only way I'd be happy with it if they go out and sign all these offensive players and then just bring back Jimenez on like a league minimum. That'd be the only way I'd be happy with. But Jimenez is probably gone. Doumbia is probably gone. Herbers probably won't be playing D-mid if he's still on the roster in another year or two. So all you have left is Fede Navarro and Mauricio Pineda, who can step up and fill that role. And if that's going to be their starting two next season, Navarro and Pineda in the D-mids, I would be okay with that, assuming they bring some offensive pieces in as well and get some better guys on the back line, some better outside backs. You're always going to have a weak position. You got to fill in everywhere else around them. If the D-mid position is the weakest for the Chicago Fire, and by weakest you have Mauricio Pineda and Fede Navarro, veterans of the league, then I guess that's okay to be your weakest position if everything else is good. But if that's your weakest position, you still don't have a striker, and you're still figuring out who's going to play right and left back for you at certain points of the season, that's when you have problems. Okay, enough about that rant, okay? Doumbia has been an above-average player in the Swiss Super League, but does not appear to be a game changer for Major League Soccer. As I mentioned, it's a stopgap signing. The Fire need to keep this DP spot open for whoever is coming in as the next GM. Again, I am assuming it's not going to be Heights, given all the speculation and all the way the business has gone over this summer transfer window. But again, regardless, if anyone wants, even if it is Heights, who is going to be in charge, be the GM again, and want to build a playoff contending team, you want that DP spot open in your winter transfer window. So I really doubt they extend Doumbia. It's a stopgap signing, just something to kind of maybe shake things up a little bit or maybe bring a little defensive stability to the Chicago Fire roster. But for now, all I can say is let's just enjoy all that Leagues Cup has offered and what it will offer in the future. And with that, Fire fans, that's episode 45. Thank you so much for listening, for helping the show grow. Continue, share the link, share the conversation, grow the sport, grow your club. Do everything you can to help promote soccer, Major League Soccer, your club, your local club, even if it's not MLS. Help grow the sport. Let's share the Feed the Fire podcast. You can always message me or email me if there's anything you want to talk about or hear. GlassHouseSoccer@gmail.com and GlassHouseSoccer on Twitter. DMs are open. And with that, I will leave you with one final thought. Let's go Fire.